Hey up everybody and welcome back. Right, well, as you can see, I've been playing around. Linda was away this weekend, so Saturday and Sunday I went out and rode the Enfield. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed riding that. But then yesterday, which was Sunday, when I came back and I was taking my boots off and everything, I was looking at this. So I just played around with a couple of bits of tube and things to see where stuff would go. Now, speaking of where stuff would go, I've had a few comments about the swinging arm. Doing this, doing that, doing the other. You know, there are lots of ways of performing a task, and it's always interesting to get comments with, you know, you could have done it this way, or you could have done that, particularly from people who have experience of this, and it gives me a lot of options for the future. But certain things can only be done one way. You know, if you've only got 6 inches of space to fit something in, it's pointless making a 7-inch long one, because it just won't work. And the swinging arm is the point in question. You also saw me drawing it out on the welding table. You saw all the bits of cardboard there is. This is basically the only way it'll work and fulfill all the parameters that I need. Okay, so you know, I couldn't make it any shorter, or the wheel would fit. I couldn't move the engine over, or I'd have to make the centre part so small because it was touching the gearbox. There was a lot, you know, believe me, I thought of every possible way of doing this. In the first instance, remember, we were going to bolt it to the back of the gearbox. But don't forget, the gearbox is on studs. So if I have a front plate here and that on there, it's got to be able to move. It's like a rocker box problem. You've got to be able to clear the studs to get it off. So, you know, I did think one way of doing it, and everything worked out, and I was sat here and suddenly I thought, wait a minute, I can't get the engine out. I could build the frame, but then once it was finished, the engine wouldn't come out. So, you know, you've got to bear that in mind. Believe me, I do. There's an awful lot of sitting and looking and measuring and thinking before I come up with the final design that I make. And as you've seen in past videos, very often that gets modified as we go along. Alright, so this was just, as I say, thinking. What we're actually going to do today is start on the frame. We're going to do the major portion. So, before we move on to that, I'm going to show you something, and this is something I do want some comments about, particularly from any of you that either ride a big single trials bike or used to ride, because I know a lot of you are sort of my age and older. So if you have riding experience of things like the Bullets, the Matchless AGS singles, the BSA singles, and the Norton 500T, so on, I'd be interested your opinion of what I'm going to show you. So let me show you that, and then we'll come back and look to what's going to happen with the bike. Right, well, you remember when I was going through all the engine stuff, I had this somewhat ropey, well, they're just crusty, they would clean up, pair of flywheels, but I had this brand new, well, they've got a little surface rust, this alternative pair of flywheels which were made by the chap who I bought the engines off. So that's what I was planning to use. But you'll also remember that the whole point of building this Enfield is because I so much enjoy the engine characteristics when I'm riding it. It suddenly struck me the other day that there's a difference between these flywheels and these flywheels, and the difference is these have got big holes in them. So these are a lot lighter than those. In fact, I weighed this, obviously didn't take it apart, so I weighed it complete, and it came to 345 pounds. No, 345 ounces. I was going to say 345 pounds is a bit much. So then what I did was I weighed these. Actually, they are identical, the two separate ones. I weighed what I thought was approximately the amount of round stock that was in the two pieces of the crank. I weighed a piston. I found an alloy com rod, similar size. I think it was from a B50. And sort of the crank pin and stuff. So I approximated everything for this. And that came to 240 pounds. So in other words, there's ounces. There's 100 ounces difference between that and that. Now as a backup, I measured the volume of the holes and got the density, just sort of generic steel density, because these I think are tool steel, and working it out that way, the steel that was missing should be about 22 ounces, right? So 100 pound difference, 4 holes, doing it weight came to 25 ounces per hole. Doing it with the density of the steel came to 22. So I reckon I'm pretty close. There's about 100 ounces difference. So my question is, do I want the lighter flywheels? Now obviously they'll make it rev a little easier. In fact, I seem to remember in Don Morley's book that he mentions that the factory riders, I think it was the Enfield, I've got to look it up, preferred the lighter flywheels from the road bike to the ones in the competition bike. There was something about flywheels and they liked the lighter flywheels. So what I could do is make some plugs and fill these up to get it to the same weight as that, basically. Actually, well, the same thickness. They have more out on the back than these do. So yeah, that's probably those other few ounces. Alright, so the question is, do I want some lighter flywheels in this? Will it change the engine characteristics so much? Will I lose so much plonk that I won't like riding it? Because obviously this isn't something I can just put on, try it and then take it off. This is a major piece of engine work. If I put them on and don't like them, I've got to completely strip the engine, take the crank apart, put it back together, rebalance it, all that sort of stuff. So it's not a decision to take lightly. So is anybody riding a big single at the moment? And with the better brakes and suspension and everything, would I be better off with the slightly lighter flywheels? Or should I just work on these and clean them up, or put some plugs in here to get them back to that weight? Anyway, your comments would be appreciated. Right, so before we get started on making the main sort of engine holding part of the frame, I've checked that I'm still horizontal here. I'm still horizontal on the top of the cylinder. I checked that the engine is still in line with everything, and also what I did was I put my straight edge across here, measured to the wheel rim, and found out how far it is from this edge to the center line of the bike. And then I've marked that on there to give me an idea. I'm going to mark 3/4 of an inch either side of that in a minute, and then I'll know right where the frame tube should go. So let me pull you back. Actually, hold on to your seats, I'm going to have to move you. Not finished yet. Right, there we go. I've also checked I've got the forks at the right angle. So I've gone with my 24 degrees bog standard thing. I've checked that the forks and everything and the wheel are still vertical. I put a straight edge across the fork yokes. So they're horizontal, which means that's got to be vertical. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of 1.5" tube and we're going to bend it. So next thing I'm going to do, it goes to there. Let me go around the other side. That on the centre there. See, we're there. Right? So what I've got to do is measure this angle, so we can put a bend in it. Measure this angle here. And we know that I'll let this wander slightly, so it's not going to be at right angles to the vertical axis. Right? So let me mark these couple of things on here, and then we'll go over and I'll measure that angle as well, and I'll measure this angle, and then we'll go and see about bending some tube. Right? So let me do those bits. Right, well, let's see what we've got here. Get our super pooper digital doodad out. I would say that that was it, and that is reading 111 degrees. Oh, isn't that interesting? Because the otter, I ended up at 113. Right, now the other ones, we're going to do the old-fashioned way because it's going to be easier with a protractor. That's on there. That's there. And of course we don't have... tell you what we'll do, we'll draw that out and then I'll measure it because it's not long enough. Hold on. Right, so I just drew around the front and the rear one and extended them a little bit. So the front angle is going to be should extend them a bit more. I thought that would have been more than long enough. Now I can see the end, you see. I get that on there, that on there. And that is giving us, out of the vertical, 4 degrees. So that's 4 degrees. Now this one I presume I could do with having it longer as well. This looks to be almost 90 degrees. Minus littlest bit of work here will... It's 1 degree out. So that's 1 degree. Alright, so let's transfer them to there so that I know. 1 degree. Degrees. All right, so let's get some 1.5 inch tube, and what we'll do is we'll cut a piece extra length, do the bend, then we'll lay this on the tube and we can mark out. Now we've got to remember at this end that that's not how we want it, right? So I'm going to put plus, I don't know, what, 3/4 of an inch, because that is where it is touching the tube, but of course it's going to be coped. So that's the dead center line of this piece of tube, but the outside 3/4 inches each way are going to come round here because it's going to be curved. Done that before, marked it, cut it, and then of course it butts up perfectly, but it doesn't wrap around. Right, let's find some tube and put the right dies in the bender. Now before we do the bending, I brought you around here because I wanted to show you something just to allay any worries you might have. I'm going to use 3/4 inch for what is basically the rear subframe. I was going to use 1 inch, but to be honest, it doesn't give me clearances. I've got to start putting bends in and things. So what you've got to realise is, right, when this is on here, we've got 1.5 inch. This chrome moly tube, it's good and strong. It's going to connect the headstock to here. There is also on the cylinder head another good, it's a big, where is it, what have I done with the head? There's a big mount here, see that? It's cast in, it's a good inch wide. So we're going to be bronzed up here, we're going to be bronzed down here, there's going to be some gussets there, so that is going to be really strong there. It's going to be mounted to the cylinder head. Then here we're going to have more 1.5 inch tube that's going to come down. Now the Enfield frame only has one mounting at the end. It comes down and there's one mounting onto those engine plates. I'm going to do 2. So we're going to swan it to give us room for the wheel, and then there's going to be 2 mounts, and then 1/4 inch, really big 1/4 inch plates, 3 mountings on the engine. That's going to be bronzed on there. Then there's going to be gusset plates here. So this whole thing is going to be incredibly rigid. This is going to be rigid. This is going to be bolted in big plates. This down here, don't forget, this is, you saw me make that thing, and that's why the box and everything is so strong, is going to be fastened to engine plates that bolt to the gearbox and the engine. This piece is going to be incredibly strong. The idea is like the modern beam frames, like a Vincent, where as long as you've got a really strong mount for the headstock and a really strong mount for the swinging arm, and it's all in a big rigid thing using the engine, that's going to be super strong. This is basically a minor subframe to carry the rear suspension unit tops. The thing to remember about rear suspension is when you hit something with the wheel, it's not transmitting the forces up to this frame, it's only transmitting a small portion of those forces, because obviously that's what the suspension unit is there for. That takes up the force. Plus, this is going to be triangulated, so this tube that comes up that side to here is then going to go to here, so any forces into there will go into his. The C15, you remember, this was just bolted on. A lot of bikes have a bolt-on rear subframe. BMWs do, the old flat twins, because it's relatively unnecessary to have it hugely rigid and heavyweight. So it just struck me I was going to put the 3/4 tube in the bender, and I thought people will say, oh, that's a bit small. It's going to be more than ample. Alright, so let's go over to the bender. Right, well, as if we needed any more evidence that I'm getting old. All that I just told you about 3/4 of an inch tube, just put that to the back of your mind for later on. I don't know why I was thinking 3/4 inch, because we're going to bend 1.5. So, we're all set, it's in, I've put a mark where I think the bend should start. I've set my little doodad to 0. So let's see what will happen here. I have to buy one of those. I think it's Swag Off-Road. Make a little fitting to go on here to put a hydraulic thing on. Ooh. 25 degrees. Piece of tube in the end. Oh, hang on. Oh, I thought I heard that clicking off. Because I know I'm near the end of the battery. I was going to say maybe I should put a piece of tube in the end of this to give myself a little bit more leverage. But it's going. Almost 40 degrees. It's like my mounting bolts are coming slightly loose. Ooh. I've lubed up the tube as well. You may remember we had some slight problems bending 1.5 inches before. And when I spoke to JD Squared, they said, oh yes, we're aware of this problem. The new ones, we've made a modification, and they actually sent me a drawing to do the mod on this. It's the fixed die that moves slightly, but I haven't got round to doing it yet. Halfway there. Man. Hang on, let me switch you off. I'm going to get a bit of something for in the end. Right, I put a new battery in and I've completely screwed this up. Maths again. I don't want that to be 110, do I? That's 110. I want it to be this. I want it to be 80 degrees. God damn it. Alright, let me set up again. Right, well, so 180 degrees, i.e. the straight line, we want to bend it 180 less 111. So we want to bend it 69 degrees. The biggest surprise in my life was when I went in to get my O-level results. And I was told I had a grade 6 in maths. And I sort of looked at the headmaster and said, wait a minute, a 6 is a pass, isn't it? And he looked at me and he said, just. I thought, well, just is good enough. Alright, so we're set at 0, we're under tension and set at 0, so all that effort for nothing. And the tube was starting to flatten out, so I've really got to do that that mod. Dig the drawing out for it. Lad. I meant to go and get the spanner and tighten those bolts. It seems to go about 10 degrees of pull. Oh, maybe not 8 degrees of pull. The fact it's a little loose doesn't matter because it's not moving relative to the various axes. Halfway there. Let's hope I've measured this right. I'll be more than miffed. I should have cut it and welded it like together with the other. What you're supposed to do with these tube benders is sort of get some pieces of tube, put a mark on, put it in, bend it to the desired thing you want, and then keep that as a template to show you where the bend starts compared to where you mark it. 55. But I'll be honest with you, one of my shortcomings is I keep taking shortcuts like that. I can't be bothered to do that. And then 6 ruined bends later I think, well, how much is that when it springs back? One more should do it. Let's bring it back to 65. Seems to spring back about 5 degrees with this tube. A bit like a spring cut on the lathe. A fraction more. Right, what's that going to? That looks to be about it. Let me check it out and we'll take it over to the frame. Alright, the moment of truth. How many tubes do I have to make a pig's ear of before I get one to fit? Now of course it's going to be too long. It should be right at this end. Yeah, that 1 degree to take off there And I think we're all right. My God. Well, after one false start, I want that to be just there, so it just touches that cup. And that is almost flat on there. Actually, that is flat on there. So my sort of original hacksaw cut, which probably wasn't perfect. Hey! I would say that when that moves over 1.5 inches, we should still be fine. Right, let's go and mark this with our piece of cardboard. This is the crucial cut. Well, if nothing else, that ruined piece of tube showed me that the bend starts about 1 inch away from the edge of the die, because I marked the die there, and actually it started, so when I did the second time I marked it 1 inch down, put it in the die, and then the die moved up there and started to bend. But as you can see, that bend is just right. So, as I say, that is where it's going to touch the tube, so the cope is going to come three-quarters or thereabouts. It won't actually be that much. So, what we're going to do now is set up the notcher, and this line that I'm making here will be, when I set the notcher up, the notch is going to be like that in the tube, alright? So the line I'm marking here is that line there. So that's why I say if I just cut it there, it would perfectly touch here, but there'd be great big gaps at either side. So that mark that I'm going to put on is where the notcher's got to be cutting. So the circular blade is going to be there, hopefully. A little trepidation, I'll be honest, about using the notcher, but oh shoot, that's what we bought it for. So we're going to notch it. Oh, actually I could use that. Let me get a square out and I'll mark that, and then I'll set the notcher up. Right, so let me show you the setup. I'm going to have to swivel you around a couple of times. So it's set at 4 degrees there. Right, hold your seats. We're set to just hit the mark, or actually slightly proud of the mark, because these blades, it says, you know, they have to have clearance to cut, so they're raked slightly. So the hole's always slightly bigger, so I don't want it to cut on the inside of that line, I want it to cut on the outside of that line. And then finally, let me swing you around again and I'll have to focus you, I think. Whoops. And how's that? See, I've got that across there and it's reading 0, so we know if that's level, then this is going to be exactly right. Actually, I suppose I should check to see that this is level as well. So let me do that. Well, when I say this is level, I mean this, so that I'm cutting at that. So let me set that up and then we'll start doing it. I'm glad I did think to check that. Look, that's not level. It's 0.7 degree out with that up like that. So what I have done is I've set that the same, and that's as close as I can get it. It's It's one of those things where you tap it up a little bit, you go too far, you tap it down a little bit, you go too far, and you're trying to keep it clamped and things not move. So 0.05 of a degree I think will be fine. So let me start cutting. Alright, fingers crossed everybody. Make it go around the right way would help. You know what I should have done here is cut that off. Ah, it's all set up now. And the battery's going. Right, I just switched you back on because I'm almost through. It's hot. There's the bit out though. Okay. Alright, let's see what we've got. I've put a couple of the little welding magnetic clamps there. They aren't very oh, hang on, I've got some. But it's looking good. I am feeling quite pleased here. My God, yes, that touches all the way around. Can I get that in there? Wow, wow, wow. Hang on, let me turn you off while I run and get the level. Now, to be honest, I'm not particularly bothered if it's vertical in that plane, but I do want it to be vertical side to side. But let's have a look, just see how well we came out. Yeah, it's nearly 2.5 degrees out there, but I'm not bothered about that. What I am bothered about is this. That's 0. And I've got the tiniest little bit to file off this side. It's not completely flat, but I file a little bit off the bottom at this side, and then, holy smokes, ta-da-ta-da! There's that rocket box. Actually, no one. People asked about getting the rocker boxes off, but as I pointed out, you know, even the B50 didn't design it so you get the rocker boxes off. Hey! Just. No, actually, there's plenty of room. Oh, well, that's a bonus. And the carb clears perfectly. Wow. I think I'll celebrate and go and have a toasted cheese and tomato sandwich. Huh. Right. See you shortly. Right, cleaned the ends up and everything. So we'll give this a little tack on the top. I'm gonna do a bigger one underneath when I can move the magnet, because what I want is when it cools, you don't get it much with bronzing, but it will pull in, and I'd rather have it pull so it pulls it down against the back end and lifts it up. So Let's see if I can just get this without wobbling around too much. Okay, that's that. For some reason the bronzing rod's got stuck in the back. There we go. Alright, so let me do a couple more tacks and then we'll check all our measurements again. Right then, so I've tacked this top and bottom and both sides, and this both sides and the back. I've let it cool and I've just checked everything. We're all still right. We're vertical at the wheels, we're horizontal at the forks, we're horizontal at the back. This is vertical. So now I'm going to, I just used the 16th bronzing rod to tack them. I didn't want to put too much heat into anything. So now I'll get some 3/32 rod and I'll go all the way around that. I can't get in there until I'm finished, but I can come far enough round so that that's not going to be any problem. And then the same with that, I can do, the bit I particularly want to do is underneath here round to there, because then we'll have the gusset plate I can do over this top part later on. So let me do that bronzing and then we've got to start looking at the front. Of course the problem is, the piece of tube I was going to use for the front is the piece of tube I've used here, because I made a pig's ear of the other tube. I might just, hold on a second. Let's see, I might just have enough. Oh, it's going to be close. Just don't forget I'm going to put a bit of a bend. See, that bend is no good for that really. I don't want, I want it to come out and then bend about here or even there. Be something like that. Anyway, we will see. Check it out. So let me get this bronzing done. Right, and so let's have a look at this front tube. Put an engine plate on, which we'll use as a template to make our alloy ones. I've put that tyre there and it's chocked here to get it so that it's going up right. So if this could go all the way up to there, that's 8 inches of travel. So the wheel spindle would travel 8 inches. So the wheel spindle would get up to there. Right? So the wheel spindle come up, it would get this high. Then we've got 13 inches roughly for the wheel to the edge of the tyre. Bit more with the mudguard. So that's 12, that's 20. So that is absolutely the maximum that it could go up. And obviously it can't go up that far. Theoretically it could, but in practice it won't. So this is about 2 inches ahead of that. So let's say we've got almost 14 inches with mudguard and everything like that from here. So if that's 2 inches, 12, that gives us our 14 inches, right? So as it goes up, right, it will go parallel with that. As you can see here, it's the tyre still sticking out further than it would go, right? Even there. So basically that's about where the mudguard is going to be at full compression, which I don't think we'll ever get to. So that's how much space we've got to put the tube in, which is why we're putting a dog leg in it. Because if we were putting a straight one in, it would, well, it wouldn't work. So I've cannibalised my other little cardboard template. That in there like that. I do it from the other side again, my hands get in the way, don't they? Put this in here, like that, there like that on the centre line. It actually can come, because I've got the exhaust just here as well, so I've got to be careful. So I want less of an angle there. Pull that back so that comes back. So that'll be like that, but straight. In fact, let me do that so you can actually see it. Right, so I've lessened the angle of this. There's a lot of talking this week, isn't there? So now it's going to go on there like that. Yeah, something like that would be about perfect. Now, because of the curve of the crankcases, I'd have to have the other bolt out here somewhere. So as you can see, that would mean that was me making that longer. I'm tending towards just believing that Royal Enfield's engineers knew what they were doing when they designed the single mounting point. With the engine being mounted in here, fastened at the top, fastened underneath, structure at the back, I don't think it's a problem. That will not act as a pivot point because there's nothing anywhere can go. It's just going to keep things right. But I don't know. I've got to cut some 1/4" alloy plates using the original ones here that I have as templates. So do I cut them to come down more, put 2 tubes in, put 2 mounting points in, or only 1? Let me give that some thought while I'm pulling out the alloy sheet and getting things ready to cut. Right, I've made my mind up. I'm going to go with the front single 7/16 bolt in there. I think it's 7/16. This hole is probably 1/2 inch, but yeah, that hole is 1/2 inch, so it must be a 1/2 inch bolt. Alright, that's fine. So that's good and hefty there. So let me mark this out, or mark 2 of them out, cut them out on the bandsaw, and then we'll drill some holes. And I just had a rough check. That piece tube I've got left won't work, which is really annoying. So I'll have to wait until the new stuff comes. So let me get this marked up and cut out. So there's the 2 plates cut out. So now all I've got to do is lay that on there, use the transfer punch to mark the holes, and then we'll clamp that together, make sure I drill the holes in exactly the same place. So let me do that. Right, so there's the plates drilled, put on. Interestingly enough, I guess these might be super media. Well, it might be for a twin, these plates. I hadn't thought about it, but the holes are in exactly the right places. But as you can see, that could have been slightly more or less cut away there, but that is fine. Actually, it just struck me that the Triumph only has the 1 bolt at the top as well. Alright, so now we're stumped at the front until my other piece of 1.5 inch chrome moly arrives. Well, I was going to knock off early, but being the hard-working, conscientious man I am, I spent the time, I made the other bottom rear suspension mount. I have to make ones for the top, but they're different. And I turned up the piece that goes in there. Right, so that will be bronzed onto that tube for that to go through. Alright, so that's going to be it for today. Stuff should arrive tomorrow So we'll get stuck in and do the other piece of tube. Right, it's a brand new day. It's cold. It's only going to be 38 tonight. Although a friend from Middlesbrough I was talking to the other night said they'd actually had a frost there. So anyway, I've finalised this piece of card and put the curve in it. So that is now the right angle up at the top, so I know. And that's nice and clear of everything and vertical and lines up with there. So this time I know to measure this angle and then deduct it from 180. So hopefully I can do this one first time. So let me go and cut some tube and get this bent and I'll come back. Right, well I might be getting the hang of this. So, actually I was right about that. That's touching the engine. I would have had to bring it out here some. It would have been difficult. I'm leaving that like that. Alright, so that's got to go there. Now of course, I've just to say got 1.5 inches here, but it's at an angle. So this is only 1.5 inches wide at right angles to it. As soon as you start to get away from being that, the length increases. So I'm going to have to put a little notch in the top as well. You might have noticed that on the cardboard. But that is fine. So let me go, I've measured the angle of the cardboard. Let me go and do the cope. And we'll try it again. Come off. So, I used the tube notcher and did all the measurements and everything like that, and it was miles out. Fortunately, it was miles out too much or too big, so there we go. I managed to save it. That's a pretty good fit now. A lot of filing, a lot of walking backwards and forwards, but that's it. So what I'm going to do now, oh it's round that side, is I'm going to clamp these, because this is 1.5 inches and this is 1.5 inches. Clamp them nice and tightly, and then I can mark down here for the hole that's going to go through. So let me set up to mark that and clamp this. That was a bugger, that. I was just, you know, whistling my way, did the measurements, marked it, did the thing through, came and offered it, and it was miles out. Just thought I'd show you this. I need to get a mark on either side, right down the centre of it. So what I'm going to do is, this is 1.5 inch tube. Of course with the camera there again it's difficult. So that's exactly at the side of the tube. Put that, make sure it's level, mark it at 3/4. Same thing again there. Mark it at 3/4. Come on now. And there we go. So I've done it on both sides. Now when I mark through this way, I just need to put a mark there and I know exactly on the side, on the centre line. Right, so there it is, clamped in. You can see we've got a nice fitting up there. So that's the first thing. Then hang on, I'm going to move you slightly. There's the next thing I want. My line is through the centre there. Oh, won't carry it around. Hold on a second. And finally, there we are, vertical, straight up and down. So now we've got to mark where we're going to put the hole through the tube. So let me take it around the other side again. So what I want to do is mark this, which is actually Apart from drawing that line on, it was one of the reasons I put the tape on. It's a lot easier to mark. Now, this is 1/2 inch. That's reasonably straight. But you can see it can still wobble around, which we don't want. Actually, I've got to come out very slightly there. That's looking good. Let me check that's still 0. Yep. So what I'm going to do, just to be on the safe side, actually this side isn't so bad. The other side, hang on, let me walk around and show you, because I'm going to mark both sides. There you see, I can wobble up and down. Oh, I don't know, at least 1/8 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is use the piece that I've made for in there as a guide. These ends have been faced off so they're exactly at right angles. So we put that in. Hold that tight to there. Actually, that's not making a mark. I can't push it or I'm going to move that out. So what I'm going to do is put a little blob of paint on there so I can get that in. Hold on. Right. Pity I don't have a 1/2 inch thick pen. There we go. I don't know, can you see that? Tiny little red blob. So let me go around the other side. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Alright, let's go and set up to drill some holes. Right, I've got this set up vertically from a couple of marks here and here. It's really difficult, it kept moving. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a 1/4 inch hole. Eventually I want a 3/4 inch hole. I'm going to drill a 1/4 inch hole here. Then I'm going to turn it over and drill the other mark. And then when I drill the other mark, I'll keep going through and I should come out the other hole. If I do, everything is right. Then we'll just put a 3/4 inch drill in and finish the job off. Okay? Let me switch off. See, even expensive keyless chucks have trouble gripping. Out the other side. So I'm just going to put a 3/4 inch drill in now and drill that out. Right then, get round here so I'm out of your way. So there's that in there. I've made this a loose fit in here because there's going to be some paint on it. And I don't have any 1/2 inch bolts around, so we're going to have to use a bit of threaded rod for now. There. So that's how that's going to go in there. Not half bad. Just nicely got our gap there. Exhaust pipe will come out fine here. Actually, here's a thought. You may remember on the Enfield, hang on, let me move you. Remember the high level pipe on my Enfield comes out, it goes in a great big swoop because it goes over the top of this. Because you can't go around the outside. Well, right, sweet. Anyway, this was something I was thinking of, which I think I've changed my mind. This is where the magneto would be. Well, magneto alternator, magneto dynamo, the mag dyno would be. These are just two idler wheels. I was half thinking of cutting that off so that I could bring the pipe down and get it to go in close there. But it's a pretty engine, so I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. So belay what I was just thinking about. Alright, so there's a little bit of bronze to do in there, but that'll be a lot easier with the frame upside down. So the next thing is to make a gusset plate for here. Right, so that's going to, actually I'm going to make it a little longer to wrap it around the front slightly. So that's going to go on there like that. And then this of course will be, well, put the rubber mounts for the petrol tank. So that's going to go on there. We're going to make this out of 4130 as well. I got 90 thou thickness, so it's going to be pretty rigid because this is only small. Now if any of you are worried about this being so close, think about things like Triumph Twins, C15, all the rest of it. They, admittedly it's a casting, but they came into just like a swan neck here, and there was only one, so that went to there, this was a casting, and that was it. Then the top tube came off and the bottom tube came out the casting. Which is why, actually, if you build a Tiger Cub and you put any kind of tank other than the Tiger Cub tank on, let me pull you back slightly. Slightly, I'll put you back a long way. You've got to put in something to go from the headstock to back here. Because if you look inside of a Tiger Cub tank, you'll see there's actually a strengthening, or two strengthening ribs that go inside the full length there. If you just mount the tank to this, then that swan neck thing will break. Guarantee it. You'll get a break in the tube. So there's a tank mounting up here. You just take a piece that goes from there to there, because of course this isn't here, it goes down like that, to bolt from there to there, and then your tank goes on top of that. Alright, let me go and set up to cut this plate. Right, well, it's actually 80 thou. I made a wooden template, and I made it 1/4 of an inch smaller, because as that runs along there, the hole is 1/4 of an inch off there. So let's see. How this comes out. I don't want this time. That looks like it. Clean it up, see what it looks like. Well, I didn't make the wood quite as smooth as I should have, but it barely took any dressing up. I put a curve on it, see that goes round there. That is going to be like that. one of those on either side. I might fold that up. No, I'll ease that out a little bit, I think, just to make it nicer. Alright, let me cut another one, then we can bronze them on, or at least tack them on. So there they are, clamped on. So let me put some bronze on. I'll sort of bronze it there. Here is easy to bronze because I can do that, but then I have vertical, so I'll do some little tacks where I can. So that's got that tacked on. As I said, doing that is no problem, but the ups and downs and rounds. I didn't put that into, I don't know whether I should have done or not. I can cut that out if need be. But I wanted a direct line to there. I certainly didn't want to come up here and do it. And I thought, well, I suppose I could have done it there. I can drill a little hole, drill a couple of holes and get that out. I'll think about it. But anyway, that, let me pull you back a little bit. Whoop. There we are. Starting to look like a frame. So that's it for this week. Next week we'll get on and do the rear subframe and the rear suspension units, although I haven't got them yet. I might steal one off one of the other bikes just to set things up. So there you go. So until next week, stay safe and enjoy yourselves.